In the deepest corners of the internet, and sometimes even at a family braai, you hear the same argument. South Africa was better under apartheid. They claim the trains ran on time, the streets were safer, the economy was booming. But if that's true, why did the world fight so hard to end it? We are not talking about nostalgia for privilege. We are asking, was the system built on legalized oppression better for the nation as a whole? The answer lies in what the incoming democratic government actually inherited in 1994. It's far more shocking than you think. Alright, so apartheid was not simple segregation. It was a comprehensive system of legalized racial tyranny, classified internationally as a crime against humanity. The entire legal architecture, like the Population Registration Act, was designed to classify every person and dictate their life, ensuring that political and economic power remained exclusively with the white minority. By the early 1990s, the state was unsustainable. It was collapsing under violent internal resistance, international economic sanctions, and overwhelming pressure. The democratic negotiations were not a peaceful transfer of power from a position of strength, they were a necessary surrender from a position of profound weakness. What did the country actually look like in those final years? Well, the state was riddled with structural violence, harm caused by structures that deliberately prevented the majority from fulfilling basic needs, whether in education, healthcare, or housing. Political violence was endemic. In late 1990, reports showed 10 people were being killed every single day in political conflict. The high rates of generalized criminal violence we associate with today. Data confirms that crime was already skyrocketing in the 1980s and peaked around 1990, coinciding with the instability of the transition. The police force itself was widely seen as hostile and biased towards the black community. This is where we challenge the myth most directly. The ANC was not handed a thriving, well-managed economy. Now hear me out. Hear me out. The international disinvestment campaign triggered massive capital flight. In 1985 alone, 9.2 billion rands of net capital flowed out of South Africa. Foreign direct investment was extremely low. The state was isolated and financially bankrupt. In the years leading up to the 1994 election, if you think about 1990 to 1994, the average GDP growth rate was negative 0.3% per year, to be exact. The economy was shrinking. At the same time, inflation was rampant, averaging 15.4% annually, destroying purchasing power. The majority of the population was deliberately handicapped. Under Bantu education, the state spent roughly 8 times more on a white child than a black child. This generated a catastrophic skills deficit. If the economy was so better under apartheid, why was the state failing financially, bleeding capital, shrinking GDP, and deliberately destroying the human capital of its majority population? The ANC was handed a mismanaged, shrinking economy, structurally crippled by its own racist design. Despite inheriting this wreck, the democratic government achieved fundamental, irreversible successes. South Africa replaced a globally condemned system of racial oppression with a constitutional democracy that protects the rights of all citizens. A moral victory that cannot be quantified. The country reversed its isolation, becoming a respected global actor and a key member of the BRICS economic bloc. PSYOP. The new government successfully tamed inflation and stabilized public finances. Crucially, the average rate of economic growth post-1994 more than doubled compared to the stagnant final years of apartheid. The democratic state unified 19 segregated education departments into a single national system. We have seen significant, demonstrable progress in transforming the racial profile of institutions, with Black African enrollment in medical schools, for example, increasing dramatically, undoing decades of explicit exclusion. The simple fact is, the democratic state created a vehicle for prosperity and freedom that was structurally impossible under the isolated, shrinking, oppressive apartheid regime. But what does this mean for you as an average South African today? Here is the current dilemma. If democracy brought freedom and economic stability, why does the average poor South African feel worse off? The answer is that the battle shifted, but the injury remains. Bro, the current crisis is not defined by racism in law, but by class inequality born from the past. While racial economic inequality is declining, meaning the gap between white and black income is slowly closing due to a growing black elite, the most shocking issue is the sharp rise in inequality within the African population. The majority of South Africans, 2/3 of the population, still live in households earning less than 8,000 rand per month. For them, the benefits of democracy have been diluted by the high overall unemployment rate, which was already 26% in 1994, remains stubbornly higher. This is the direct, cruel echo of the inherited skills deficit left by Bantu education. Service delivery and housing remain complex challenges because the state inherited housing backlogs and infrastructure that was poorly located, designed only to service the white minority while keeping the black majority far away from economic centers. The average poor South African today is profoundly better off in terms of dignity, rights, and political voice. The state no longer legally classifies and oppresses them, but they are still battling the generational poverty, the lack of skills, and the spatial injustice that was deliberately engineered by the apartheid state to keep them poor. The problem today isn't that the government has failed to build something new. It's that they were still struggling to pay off the historical debt and clean up the structural wreckage left behind in 1994. Let me know what you think in the comments. Was the ANC right to prioritize political freedom over economic revolution? Or are the sins of the past now simply the failures of the present?